The Republicans often accuse the Democrats of exaggerating victimhood and turning a blind eye to reality and distorting language to do so. The Democrats, it's often said, harbors the snowflakes in the lake who are beset by a victim complex lately. However, this frame of mind knows no party or political affiliation, especially since the Capitol riot. Assorted the conservatard figures have embodied a fragility of the Republican mind. A conflict certainty exists between the rhetoric often used about society on the hard Democratic side and reality on the ground. Many on the Democratic side seem convinced that university campuses, some of the most studiously anti-racist locations on the entire planet, are hotbeds of pitiless racism. The idea that America's trajectory since the early 17th century has been founded on and flowed from and has been defined by oppression of black people and totally implacably and functions to reinforce the system of inequality. And it strikes many as a useful conversation starter, but it is almost curiously simplistic as actual socio-historical analysts. If the Republicans like to call out these theatrical exaggerations, it has also learned from them, and in the last weeks has emulated them. The foe's dumb cunt Janine Pirro, for instance, compared the act of the tech companies deplatforming Parler, which is a fake news platform, for harboring unfiltered Republican terrorist propaganda. And she referred to it as Kristallnacht. Um, Jews are tormented, and Kristallnacht would have interesting words for the dumb cunt Pirro's rule, especially since her ideological compatriots had just stormed the Capitol and left 5 people dead. Foes fucker Carlson is also pushing Republican victimization. He claimed that the insurrection was rooted in something as blunt as the population asking, "Listen to us," with their leaders merely yelling, "Shut up and do as you're told." He ignored the clear-cut denialism about the vote count and the fact that leaders are listening to that denialism and encouraging it. The notion that the insurrections represent the neglected and unheard is especially old and odd, since the mob at the Capitol was not compromised entirely of the impecunious people that's worried about their bank accounts, but included a great many financially stable, educated people. Well, nobody in the pumpkin tit crowd is educated anyway. Another exemplar of the Republican fragility is Senator Josh Hawley, who's a dumbass. He recruited the term Orwellian to describe the cancellation of the public of the publication of his upcoming critique of the big tech. George Orwell's 1984 described in George Orwell's 1984 book, he described a dystopia where the state refashioned language to make it impossible to harbor unwelcome thoughts. Simon and Schuster, a private company, canceled Hawley's book in a world where views of Hawley's kind are basically and will continue to be widely disseminated, basically, although obviously lacking in the censoring power of the state. Um, the Democrats can court the Orwellian, and the Democratic flings around the term cis. I don't know. I'm going to skip that word. There's a word that they use, and I can't pronounce it, but I'm not sure how you would say it. I'm just going to spell it out because I'm not going to be able to pronounce this word because it's not a word I've ever seen before. It's spelled CISHETEROPATRIARCHAL, and it says to dismiss seemingly anything that almost Americans find familiar, pleasurable, and even progressive, and in one notable case, to praise looting, evidence of a desire to shunt thought into the forbiddenly constructed channels. However, the Republicans' use of Orwellian to refer to certain bodies choosing not to broadcast their views represent a sloppy dilution of what the author meant. Orwell would have had what they call choice words for the notion that the response to an invasion of the Capitol and a subversion of the election process, not the invasion and subversion in themselves, but it ought to make us what they call heed the warnings of 1984. This transformation of the term Orwellian parallels as it is what the Republicans complain about in the Democrats' transformation of racism from referring to prejudice and discrimination to referring to the results That is, disparities include indicate a racist society, and to consider this post 1960s usage of racism manipulative and dismissible is interesting, coming from the people who would pretend that the 1984 was about reason censorship as opposed to a radical reprogramming of all human thought. The Republic parallels the excess of wokeness also in denying sheer logic when it's inconvenient to a larger ideology. But some of the hard Democratic side believes that it is wrong to generalize groups, but they're quite readily to delineate the whites and the whiteness as unitary categories. Some Democratic education reformers they justify racial preference policies on a quest for diverse views in classrooms, even as they consider it racist if black students are expected to represent their diversity in a classroom discussion. This tension is not considered inconvenient as long as both phenomena are processed as countering white supremacy by pushing back at unfair expectations, or either countering racism, fostering diverse views to decenter whiteness. And so to question any of this is not to get it, because the overriding principle of battling white privilege is sacrosanct, even in the face of logic. Anyone who takes issue with these logical failings should attend the more extreme anti-empiricism, and with the violent streak added on, the pumpkin tit inbreeders who believe that the election was stolen from the squatter, but nevertheless affirm the validity of the House and Senate elections on the same ballots. They will not accept the reality anyway, apparent to anyone who can put common sense before politics, that pumpkin tits lost. These inbred sycophants fiercely and implacably resist logic in the name of a greater good, battling the Democrats. On both the Democratic side and the Republican side, this brand of exaggeration and anti-empiricism seems rooted not just in politics but in the alienation of modern life. Humans are minted in small bands of people nested in lifelong intimate relationships of kin and marriage. The idea of atomic individualism remains alien to perhaps most people on Earth. The mass movements offer a sense of belonging that the modern life does not provide, as well as the delicious feeling of having it all figured out. The small indigenous tribes, like the Matsujenga in Peru, live in groups so close-knit that rather than go by names, people use to use family terms. Instead of using family terms, they use like one is sister, like one would be sister, father, or aunt, not Maria, Fred, or Pauline. Americans are stuck with their names, but membership in a pumpkin tit Republican side or a Democratic movement lets people be sister, father, or aunt of a kind, a part of a whole united by a sense of eternal battle against a menacing other. This upshot is that the Republican has no grounds for supposing itself immune from the contemporary pathologies of the Democratic side. At this moment, the Republicans must also reckon with the fact that while the Democrats' victimhood complex gets people fired and creates a lot of social grief, the Republicans' victimhood complex can end in members of Congress huddling under their desks if 5 citizens lose their lives. So, yep.